Welcome back to part 2 on the transmission cover and the 3 engine seals which it houses and needed to be replaced. As you can see here, the 3 seals for the primary, the shifter shaft and the push rod have been put back into the cover. And maybe you remember from part 1 actually that I was a little bit worried about these hairline fractures on this rim around the primary. It worried me a little bit, and after thoroughly cleaning this cover, and it's quite thick, Ted and I thoroughly checked the inside, and there's no crack visible on the inside of this cover whatsoever. So we're confident that it's going to be okay. It was very superficial on the outside, so we're not worried about that. What I did do in the meantime is actually paint the inside of this cover twice with old-fashioned red lead paint, just to make absolutely sure that no oil will be in any which way able to pass through this cover, just to make sure that it's completely oil tight. So that's the inside. If we look on the outside of the cover, maybe you can remember that the bolts had broken off on which you fit the chain guard, and those have been drilled out and rethreaded to an M8 bolt. Now these 3 engine seals for the push rod, the primary, and also for the shifter shaft, 2 of them are made of 100% rubber. They're flexible, so they're very easy to put back into the cover. You can do that with a rubber mallet, and because they're so flexible, there's no worry about putting them in the wrong way and damaging the seals. Now this one over here for the shifter shaft is a different story. It has a soft metal housing enclosing the seal, and I've read a lot about using the right size socket to put it back into place. That didn't work for me, so I actually used the handle off a hammer, a rubber hammer which I had lying around, which is round, and that wood was a lot softer and fitted the seal perfectly, so I was able to put that back in without damaging the seal. So this has been finished now, and as you can see, I cleaned off the old gasket on the rim very carefully, not to damage the rim whatsoever. And now it's time to clean off the gasket remains on the engine itself, which I'm going to do first, and then put the cover, of course, and a new gasket back in place. Now the new gasket just came in a few days ago from the Kawasaki dealer, and so now it's time to put it back together. Let's get started. I was told by the Kawasaki dealer that this gasket will fit. It needs a little bit of an alteration, and this corner here, which is of no use for this type of bike, was in this corner here, and I cut it out before placing the gasket and the cover back on the bike, so that's easier. So the old gasket remains off the engine have been cleaned off, so now we can put the cover back on. I put on a light coat of gasket sealant, and which I'll let rest and dry for a little while before putting the cover back on. Well, as you can see, the transmission cover is put back into place. Everything is torqued down. Here you see the shifter shaft coming through the cover with a new seal, engine seal, the primary with this new seal, and also I put back the push rod, and there you can see with a new seal. So those have been put back into place. I'm now going to clean off the washer and the front sprocket now that I can get at it. Cleaned it all off first and then put those back on. Put the cover back on, which is lying over there. Fill her up with oil again and give it a go. Of course, put the chain back on, I won't forget that, and yeah, then we should be ready to start her up again. Well, now that you've seen, I've been able to put the transmission cover back into place, torque everything down, fill the engine up with oil again, and when I started the engine, the oil light switched on and wouldn't switch off anymore, and the engine started to run hot. So I knew I had an oil circulation problem. Now, I've been doing a lot of reading on internet what can cause such a problem, and it came down to an air pocket. As you might recall, this engine has been without any oil, which I drained out before I went for a few weeks to Normandy, and before the gasket came in and all the seals came in. Eventually we're 6 weeks further down the road before we fill the engine up with oil again. And that's where the problem comes in. Leaving a motorcycle engine for such a long period without any drop of oil in the engine, and after such a long period, when you fill the engine up with oil again, there is a potential of getting an air pocket in the engine, and then your oil pump just won't suck any oil, and the oil will not be circulating, and if you don't watch out, you're going to damage your engine. So I've done a number of things. I eventually solved the problem by lying the motorcycle all the way on its right hand side, and so I lowered it as low as possible to the ground, and as you might know, the oil switch is located on the bottom hand side of this engine. That's where it's giving the signal that there's no oil compression or oil circulation going through the engine, and by tipping the motorcycle all the way down on its right hand side, that's where the air bubble comes out. So that was solved in that manner. I had some suggestions to maybe take out the oil switch, but that's very difficult to get at. That's a lot of work, so I tried the other possibility first, and that worked for me. I also tried to loosen the oil filter underneath the engine while it was running, and then you wait till a little bit of oil comes streaming out of the filter, and then tighten it back again. That didn't work. I also tried to put the oil filter into oil to make sure there was no air pocket in the filter itself. That didn't work either, so eventually I had to solve the problem by lying the engine all the way on its right hand side. So that's been solved now, and we can start the bike again. The seals are in place, nothing is leaking, everything is working fine. So let's start her up so you can at least hear what it sounds like. Now, the engine itself still needs some final adjustment work, especially with the carbs and the new air filters that I installed, so that's going to be rejetted. Just a few more things to do on this bike. I need a rear tail light, that's going to be important, but that's an easy fix. I would like to have a new set of handlebars and new grips, and I need a new front tire, and the front rim needs to be done. And besides that, the engine, the motorcycle is more or less finished. So just a few more things to go before we take our first test run. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to the next video.